to our official conference rapporteur, Dominique le Roux, who's going to tell us what we learned.
I'm going to tell you what you learned. Wow. Well, these are the things I've learned. I hope you've learned them too. I think the biggest thing that we've all come away with is that we need to be mobile first. Not just mobile optimized, not just mobile friendly, but we need to think about mobile first. Has that also come out clearly for you guys? I think Jacqueline Wright in her first session put it very powerfully. She said, if your business is not online, you better rethink it. And then she rethought what she'd said and she made it even more powerful and blunt. She said, if your business is not on mobile, get out of the business. Interesting, hey? Whose businesses here are not on mobile? Oh, you're all there. Oh, you're sorted. You're sorted. You didn't even need to be here. You know this stuff. I thought some of the statistics that John Fargo shared were very, very interesting. And of course, we've seen it at a country level. Here he was speaking about a Southeast Asian level. But of course, it's these numbers that are the important ones. There's your population, and there's the number of mobiles. More mobiles than people. So who here has got 2 mobiles? How? And are you listening to them both at the same time? One's for your husband, one's for your kids. Or one's for your family and one's for your girlfriends. So those are the big trends in terms of mobile, but of course we're all in the travel industry, so we're particularly interested in how do those trends equate to us in the travel industry. And Jen Villalobos from Google had so many interesting statistics and facts and figures. And I know some of what she said about what they're producing in the future kind of went over a lot of our heads. But I think the trends that she pointed out were really, really, really important. And where it starts is people are looking more at travel websites. They're looking at them more on mobile. But the problem is that the time spent per session has gone down. Now, those just seem like little statistics, but we really need to get that in our head. More people looking online, more people looking on mobile, but each session is less. So yeah, Jen spoke about micro moments. And of course, a moment is a short thing, and then a micro moment is an even smaller thing. And if even all the big guys at Google are thinking about micro moments, I mean, they've got all the money and all the research in the world. We need to be following their example. And if they believe that's the way to look at the travel industry, with all the data that they have at their resources, it's definitely something that we can imitate in our businesses. So of course, she really spoke about that emotional moment, and she showed us that video. This hasn't come through very clearly because it's a bit distorted, but just to remind you, she said there's the I want to get away moments, so that's when the person's dreaming. The time to make a plan moments, when the person is planning. The let's book it moments, obviously when they're booking, and then the can't wait to explore moments, the experience. And I think the challenge for all of us is for us to look at our own websites and for us to look at our own communication and every paragraph and every website and every page to think about which of those moments am I tackling with this. For me as a communicator, I thought it was really, really important for some of the websites that I'm doing for the travel industry. In the future, I'm going to be more focused on every paragraph I'm going to be thinking about and every picture I'm going to be thinking about which of these moments am I focusing on? Because of course, remember what Jackie had said. What are the 3 keys? Focus, focus, focus. And so then it came down to this issue of mobile minutes and where are people. So we're drilling further and further down now. They're all on mobile. The time that they spent is broken down and separated and fragmented. And then what are they doing on mobile? And of course, Gap Kim's talk was very, very interesting. I mean, those are staggering statistics. 1 in 5 is on Facebook and Instagram. So that immediately tells us that's where we need to be. That's some of the power that we need to harness. And he also spoke about some of these issues. Do you remember he spoke about leaning forward and leaning back? And he sort of referenced that a few times, but he didn't really explain it very well, did he? Did you guys all understand what he meant by that? Yeah? I see a no. So there's the leaning back is like on Facebook where you're kind of sitting chilled and you've got a cup of coffee and you're kind of scrolling and you're just kind of seeing what's there. You're not actively exploring. You're just scrolling and stuff comes up. That's leaning back. You're relaxed. You're not actively participating. You're just keeping an eye on the stuff that's coming at you, sort of like watching TV. Then there's the lean in, which is more of what you do on Instagram, where you're searching and you're moving between things. There's not just a stream that happens, so you're more active. And these are really, really important concepts for us when we're marketing our businesses. Because are we looking at a medium like Facebook, which is lean back, or are we looking at something like Instagram, where people have to be more active in their search? And so if they have to be more active in their search, what does that mean? What do we show them? If they're scrolling, how do we grab their attention? So you can see we're drilling down now. All of this is on mobile, but we start drilling down and really thinking strategically and analytically about everything we put out there. It's not just about, oh, this is a pretty pic, I'll just put it up. I'll send it out to as many people as possible. And so he spoke about that mobile being a center of discovery. So now to bring it back to ourselves, how do we apply that? Because obviously each of us needs to think about that in our own businesses. So if things are mobile, if it's all moving in that direction, what does that mean for our existing businesses? Because this is something we really need to act on. It's not just, oh, okay, that's an interesting statistic. So we saw how Noreen was speaking about how Lonely Planet, the world's biggest guidebook publisher. So talk about, you know, having to turn around a container ship. Can you imagine? Like if you're a small little organization, it's quick and easy to change things. But if you're this great big organization that prints millions of guidebooks, how do you turn that around? And they have, instead of them resting on their laurels and saying we're the biggest guidebook publisher in the world, we're not going to change anything, they've had to completely turn their business upside down and focus on digital. And so once again, if we're seeing the big guys really have to do that, it's a chance for us to think about in our own businesses, how do we turn that around? And here's some practical examples that Gap gave. His practical Facebook session, for those that you were in the two sessions he did yesterday, were very, very practical. And he spoke about breaking everything down into bite-sized chunks. So even stuff that you're putting on Facebook, that you're putting on Instagram, he spoke, for example, about they have found the 3-second video is the most effective. And we're not just talking about effective in that the most people watch it. Facebook has all the money in the world to advertise. They're a lot richer than the entire Lao PDR in most of the countries in Southeast Asia. They've got all the research, all the money, and they have realized that a 3-second video is what gets the greatest conversion rate. So when you want somebody to click on something and act and buy something, they've found that a 3-second video has the biggest transfer. So once again, that's something that we can apply in our own businesses and in our own marketing strategies. Right, I'm glad Maeve and Peter just walked in the door. Key concepts that they spoke about is the difference between human capital and human resources. I loved that picture from Peter's presentation. This was certainly an overwhelming theme, wasn't it? This issue of staff retention, staff training, unmotivated staff, people leaving you to go to other places. So there was a lot to learn about it. I really thought that Maeve's definition of a human resource versus human capital was a really important one. Remember what she said, resources are finite. We will run out of gold, we will run out of oil, we'll run out of all of those resources. Resources are finite. But she spoke about capital. Capital is about investment. Capital is something that grows and builds with time. And that was, I think that's just a really interesting mindset. I think if we shift our mindsets around that, that already changes how we approach. John had also given some of the statistics behind that, and it's sort of, he was looking particularly at the Laos situation in his one, and then expanding across Southeast Asia. So it's not just something that you guys are experiencing and feeling that you're alone in this. John gave really valuable data in backing up with data what you guys are experiencing. And of course, Maeve and Peter spoke about the difference between training and education. And I personally also found that a really, really useful differentiation. Certainly in our conversations, we tend to confuse them, don't we? Or am I the only person that had never really understood this before? Cool. So you've got that. The training is practical, it's job-oriented, and it's skill enhancement, education, and so that's in general, not just in general, but that can be something applied already in the workplace and later on, whereas education is theoretical, learning-oriented, knowledge enhancement, and that's more about preparing people for a career in this awesome industry of ours. Then there's all kinds of other training that's available. So you guys might have missed this because it was also something that Gab Kim spoke about in his session. I would recommend that you all bookmark this. Blueprint by Facebook. So it's facebook.com/blueprint. They have 62 modules on how to do absolutely everything on Facebook, but they have all kinds of business tools. So he differentiated between Facebook for business as opposed to the normal Facebook that we're all on, and there's Instagram for business as well. This is amazing training for all of us, and it's completely free. There's 62 modules that train you about absolutely everything you could possibly want to know about social media marketing, usage of Facebook, etc., 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 how to make videos for Facebook, all of those kinds of things. And more importantly, they're going to be moving towards an accreditation scheme. So you and your staff can start doing this training. It's all online. That was something that came out of this morning's session. Need for training. This is free, it's available, it's online. And once there's an accreditation system in place, that's literally something you can put on your CV, you can start incentivizing your staff with. Then of course, Peter spoke about an integrated approach to training and education. And I think a lot of you were very, very inspired about the Laneth model, the human capital destination model. So I won't go into the details of that, but I think we all learned a huge amount out of that. And Maeve, is there going to be an opportunity to go to Laneth at all? If participants would like to see Laneth, and I think it's very, very inspiring, then do chat to Maeve, because it's an interesting model that you might want to take back to your own countries. Then it comes down to my own human capital as a manager of a tourism business, or even if I'm starting out, if I'm a tour guide, if I'm sort of even at an entry level, there's managing other people's human capital, but how do I manage my own capital? And Noreen spoke quite powerfully about that. She spoke about talent, temperament, and tenacity. And some really useful, practical pieces of advice, particularly for us as women in business. So, and she encouraged us to take some time out for ourselves, time out to think. And it's really worthwhile as well to be conscious about our own investment in ourselves and our own human capital. And of course, she challenged us about our management styles. Because of course, when we're more junior in our positions, we can criticize how our bosses treat us, and whether our bosses criticize or praise. But then, as with everything at the forum, it needs to be about how we apply that ourselves. So the question then comes, how am I as a boss or as a leader in my own business? Do I trust my staff? Do I praise them and criticize at the appropriate times? And likewise, Maeve encouraged us to say, and once again, this is in terms of your human capital, in terms of your staff, in terms of your management of your team, we don't have all the money in the world. We come from small businesses. Of course, we'd love to pay our staff a whole lot more, but we just don't have the money, do we? And she really made the point, which was reinforced later, but she was the first to make it powerfully is that it's not just about the salary. It's about the rewards and benefits, and it's about creating a culture that people want to be a part of. Jax also noted a few things about that we as women, as leaders, as managers, could apply in our own businesses. So she issued the challenge about hiring people that are right for the job, not just because they're our brothers or uncles or family members. And she had said it's only a job. Leave it if you can't speak honestly. But I took that as a challenge to myself. When I'm managing people, do I remember it's only a job for them? If they can't speak to me honestly, am I managing them in the right way? And then she said, please don't create stupid rules in a company. So coming back to Mav's point about developing the culture, this had come out of Angelica's presentation. And she was asking, is your team on board with your product strategy? So once again, that's not necessarily about paying them more money, but if they feel that they're a part of the strategy, that they feel that they're part of something more powerful, then they're part of a team and less likely to leave. And I thought that was a really important point that Angelica made. And of course, you know, she's got big expensive hotels, but I think it applies even more so in smaller businesses. Experiences was another thing that came out strongly, wasn't it? This issue about the fact that it's not just about products and services, but it's about the experience. So once again, as he did so well, John gave us some figures on the trends. And Jacqueline made the point that the old models of promoting our businesses are not working. So advertising has gone down and product development isn't working. The whole point is if we're creating an experience, we're going to get the word of mouth advertising that is so important. So she spoke about 90% of success in marketing comes from personal recommendations. And a personal recommendation happens when somebody's had an experience rather than just bought a product or a service. In terms of that experience, Gap also made the point that you really need to start early. So he gave the example of this software, Canvas, which I got terribly excited about, and I'm definitely going to look it up and play with it. But remember when he showed us a small video, and within that, the person can go in advance and they can scroll and they can literally, they're not just seeing a bunch of pictures, they're having an experience before they've even bought the product. So if we think experience, it's not just about when the person gets to the destination or gets onto your tour or gets into your hotel. Give them an experience while they're just thinking about traveling. And once again, coming back to Jen, she said that things are fragmented. She said it's about the moments, and then she reinforced and said, you make the moment meaningful, which is what an experience is. So it's not just a moment, it's a meaningful moment. Then, of course, branding. That's been it's a big one, hasn't it? We've had some really, really practical sessions. So we started with inspiration from Jax. Last night somebody was talking about something that she'd said, and the person said to me, she referenced Jax and she said she spoke about her as Jack Daniels. So definitely that has stuck. Make it memorable is the issue. And what this speaks into is, there was a really great practical session by Sarah yesterday afternoon, by Sarah Turner from Crunchy Frog. And she looked at all of the things that make up a brand. And of course, so everybody threw out suggestions and they said logo and color and your statement and the fonts that you use, and listed all of those things as the brand. And then part of what Sarah was saying is, how do you make that memorable? How do you stick? Your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not your color and your fonts and all of that. Your brand is how they all come together to make them memorable. And then you have to also remember, it's not about you and it's not about your brand. It doesn't matter how amazing your brand is. People are more loyal to their personal needs. So what that means is, We make promises and then we have to meet them, and that's what branding is, because it's not about us. It's absolutely not about us. Our brand is about the promises that will be met by the people. Sarah's talk, for those that were in her workshops, very, very practical. I'm seeing lots of nodding. I must say each of the sessions I was in yesterday afternoon I really enjoyed and found really, really practical. What about you guys? So this was interesting for me. Sarah, at the end of her presentation, said, why is loyalty important? And I thought that was an interesting question. Of course, we all know why loyalty is important. We want our customers to be loyal. But she made us talk about it and drill down into it. She spoke about the fact that it's financial. It's if somebody's a loyal customer, you invest less in them and you can charge them more. She spoke about the fact that if people are loyal, then you can come up with brand extension, you can sell more stuff to them. Isn't that fabulous? Plus, because we all are not entirely perfect. I mean, you guys aren't. There'll be forgiveness. If we have loyalty to our brand, if we've developed loyalty to our brand, she spoke about the fact that when I make a mistake, which I do all of the time, if my people feel loyalty to me, if my customers feel loyalty to me, then they will forgive that. And then a really, really important point that I thought that she made, which came back to what we're talking about human capital, was that she said, when there's loyalty, human resources benefits. So basically your team benefits. There's lower employee turnover and the ability to attract talent. Because we all want to work for a great brand, don't we? So that's one of the things that, I don't know about you guys, but I found it really interesting how the different themes reinforce each other in the most interesting ways. I would never have thought about having a strong brand helping me sort out my human capital issues. This issue of knowing your audience, in the past, before this conference, I would have put know your audience as something that's linked to brand, that's part of brand. But through this conference, I've gotten to understand that it's a lot more about brand. So to develop your brand, you need to know who your audience is. But you need to develop your entire strategy for your business is about knowing your audience. And I don't think there was a single speaker that didn't challenge us about this, about knowing our audience. And it's not necessarily the most obvious theme because we all think we know our audiences. But really the issue is, do we? Who was this? I think this was also Gab's presentation. He spoke about how consumers have changed. So we might have known our audience last year and 2 years ago and 5 years ago, but they're changing. Are we keeping up with that? So the challenge is really to keep knowing our audience. And one of the other things that came out that Jacqueline also mentioned, she was saying, if you're a small business and you don't have a whole lot of money, it's about watching people. Of course, she works for profit. They make loads and loads of money. They have all the resources in the world. And she said that she doesn't necessarily find it that useful to do a survey. It's literally watching people and you'll see what they can do. And I thought that was a useful piece of information that we can all really apply in our businesses. Go out there and watch what people are doing rather than telling us what they're doing. So we keep needing to watch so that we know where our consumers are going, who our audience is in the future. And so it starts with knowing the facts and figures and keeping up to speed with what the facts are this year as opposed to 2 years ago. And then obviously acting on that. So if we're seeing something like, in 2020, half are going to be aged under 30, that's the millennials, then how does that affect the strategy in our businesses? Linked to that, one of the things that came out is, if you know your audience, then you can find out exactly what their niche is. If you really know your audience, you can target yourself. Once again, what Jack said, focus, focus, focus. And so I think this came out quite strongly as well, is if you can identify your niche, then you can target them exactly and you get to know those people. So instead of thinking, well, you know, I have a tour company and I appeal to people from the ages of 17 to 69, male and female, rich and poor. You can't own any of those spaces. But if you can identify who your specific niche is, who you focus on, and target your products directly at them, you're more likely to be successful. So, once again, Noreen gave us this good example. She said their audience is curious, open-minded people who want to engage with the world around them in new ways. Now, if I want to set up a competitive publishing brand, and I can speak from experience because I used to be a travel book publisher, I set up a completely separate one. So that's me, okay? I fall into that category. But Lonely Planet already dominated. This is in my country, South Africa. Lonely Planet completely dominated that market. Boy, was I jealous. So when I was going to set up my own guidebook imprint in South Africa, there's no ways I can take on this big, rich international player. So what I needed to do was look at other demographics. What are some of the other niches? And we identified some niches of people that are not that curious. They mostly want to go and tick off the big things. You know, they would come to South Africa and they want to see the big five. They're not really curious about all the other stuff. They want to see the obvious stuff. They're not that open-minded. They want safety. They want security. They want to know in advance exactly what they're going to get. So we created guidebooks for those people. My point is, one audience is not better than the other audience. Just focus on one of your audiences. And each of the guys that came out, each of the people spoke to a certain extent about exactly this, about knowing your audience and your niche. Another reason that you need to know your niche, and once again, this comes back to the very practical session that Gap did. Something that I didn't know about Facebook for Business, they have this amazing way, because of course, we in the travel industry, it's quite hard, isn't it? Like, we continually want new people. So there's one thing about getting recurring customers, but what if somebody's only coming to Southeast Asia once in their life? They're never going to be a recurring customer, so of course we want them to have word of mouth, but we want other people just like them. How do I reach those people? If I know what my niche is, and I have a database of my past customers, and they all fit within that niche, there's this very creepy and most powerful, totally fabulous tool on Facebook for Business that I did not know about, where you input the email addresses of all of your past customers whose emails you've got. Facebook analyzes themselves and says, oh, I see that this is the niche, this is what they're interested in, this is how old they are, because Facebook takes those emails and matches it against all the Facebook profiles in its system. You know how when you sign up for Facebook, you input an email address? So if I've eaten lunch at Maeve's restaurant, and I've dropped my card in the little jar, and she has my email address. She doesn't know me from a bar of soap, but she inputs my email address into that on Facebook. Facebook will find all kinds of other people just like me, with the same age and the same interests and the same demographic, and it'll pop up an ad to them in their feed. Very, very powerful tool for all of you guys. Very powerful, very creepy, totally fabulous. Harness it. The point is it only works if you know your niche. If you're in business and you're very clear about who your niche is, then Facebook can duplicate and replicate and find other people like that. And then what is that niche dreaming of? I thought this was a powerful one that Jackie shared. And so this is also part of knowing your audience. So it's not just knowing the statistics. In terms of your niche, this came out from a few speakers. So it's not just knowing the facts, but it's knowing their motivations. So what do they dream about? This was a little bit of a shocker to some people, that a wine could be called Fat Bastard. But if you know your audience, you know what appeals to them. So Australians have a crude sense of humor. Australians are not like the French. They don't necessarily know about the latest wines. They don't necessarily pronounce all those wines. And they think French people are grumpy and very snooty. So if I have a vineyard, am I going to do a label that is similar to a French one? No. If I know my niche, and I know that the people that are going to drink my wine are people that actually don't know that much about wine, they're totally going to buy it on the label. They're people that are going to stand in the supermarket looking at all the bottles, completely clueless about what to buy. Then I put something like that appeals to their crude sense of humor, that shocks them, that makes it noticeable. And that might be offensive to people in all other markets and all other niches, but it totally targets the people in my particular niche. Now, there's not a single person in this room that doesn't have competition. This was a real recurring theme, wasn't it? My competitors are all copying me. What do I do about it? Who hasn't experienced that problem? Once again, I think Jackie challenged us on this and said you need to think differently. And I think she exemplifies it really well, doesn't she? Because I think she's awesome. And I wish I could copy her. I could imitate her. I could wear fabulous scarves like she does. I could buy the same sunglasses. I could do all of that. But she is so unique. Not one of us in this room is anything like her. It doesn't matter how hard we tried to copy everything she says and does. She said, if you built your brand right, now notice that's in the past tense. She said, if you did build it right, you will be copied now. So all of you in this room have obviously done something right, according to Jax, because if people are copying you, it means you did something right. You know what they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But how do you stop that damaging your business? She said, you must have your unique differentiation that nobody can own. Your DNA is important. And of course, other speakers spoke about that on all different levels. We looked at country tourism promotions. There was the picture of all the beaches that all look identical. And Angelica, once again, reinforced the same thing. Angelica is another example of a really unique, powerful woman that none of us could imitate. Stylish, classy, beautiful, I'll never be in her league. She spoke about differentiate your product. Remember, she told us about the spa in the car. What an awesome idea. And part of it is the selection. So this is her hotel here, which is next to the Presidential Palace. That's a complete unique location and situation, which is trading on some of the history in that location. So that's millions of dollars thrown at that business. But we could do the exact same thing in any location with any business. If I have a noodle stand by the side of the road, is there a way that I can really make it unique rather than copying everybody else? And part of how we make it unique is we make it absolutely authentic. So it's not just some fake, slick branding exercise, but it's really authentic. Nobody can imitate that. So once again, we saw with Lonely Planet and Noreen's presentation, everything about Lonely Planet goes back to the authenticity of this couple so many years ago. Then once again, how we differentiate is by having core values. And this is Lonely Planet's core values: meaningful, immersive, enabling, inspiring. No core value is better than any other core value. Noreen gave their core values, but I think the challenge is what are the core values in each of your businesses? And I think that came out quite strongly, because that's also how you maintain your human capital, if everybody buys into the same core values of what your brand stands for. And your brand might stand for security, confidence, predictability, whereas another brand might stand for excitement, innovation, quirkiness. Shadi really challenged us with this, didn't he? He said, either be the marketplace or add value. Don't get stuck in the middle. And I know that came out in the context of a lot of people talking about itineraries and how other people are copying your itineraries. This is quite a hard one to apply, but I thought it was a real challenge to us about what is the value that my business, if I'm a tour operator, I'm creating itineraries, what is the value that I add? And how do I not get stuck in the middle where everybody else can imitate me and I can't differentiate? And of course you can differentiate, but without it making any sense. Now, you've all seen me this week. I've got such a huge cold and I've been trying not to spew my germs over you. I think I could have benefited from one of those. Could have my toilet roll hanging over my head. This one about innovation as your ultimate survival tool, he did a practical workshop on it yesterday. That's a really useful one for you guys that weren't in that session to have a look at as he takes you through that process. So he said you've got to add value. Either build a marketplace yourself or add value so you're not caught in the middle and stuck. The key to doing that is innovation. So you always stay up to pace, stay ahead of the game. That's his process that I'm speaking about, and in his main session he just introduced that, but in his workshop he took everybody through how to apply that. And I was loving seeing some of the discussion that was happening. So I'd really recommend that you use those tools that he's provided. Right, another thing that came up for me, and it wasn't expressed in so many words, but there is so much free stuff for our businesses. So much free stuff. And then in one of the sessions it came up, nearly free. So for example, Facebook is free. You can use Facebook advertising. You can invest as little as like $1 a day or less than that. So there are these amazing free resources or very, very, very cheap resources. So for example, there's the whole social media presence. All of that is free or very, very low investment. But then the point once again that Shadi made was, we might not be paying for those things. There are these incredible high-tech tools that we've got, but he made the point that you really need to commit to it. You really need to invest time and energy and effort into it. And I thought that was a good challenge to all of us, because it's very easy to like quickly set up a whole lot of social media accounts, but it's how we invest in it according to our strategy day after day. And then it's about putting it on mobile. This is an example. For example, Tasty has been so successful. But you can make a video like that yourself without Peter's fabulous camera. You can make it with your own mobile completely for free. Post it completely for free on social media. So it's not really about us as small businesses. We don't have money for advertising. Jackie already told us advertising doesn't work. We can be using all of these amazing free resources to market our businesses. And then this kind of ties into free. It's really about keeping on learning, and a lot of the learning resources are free. So we need to be learning about who our consumers are and what the emerging trends are. We spoke about that a little bit earlier. And then keep learning about what's the new medium. So for example, video is the next big thing. In fact, it's not next, it's here already. Gap was talking about the fact that video is growing 2x. So every year, the effectiveness of video is twice what it was last year. That's not just talking about the volume of it. It's talking about when you market using video, how many people click to purchase or click to sign up for more information or act on it. Whereas photos are only growing at 38%. So if you're aware that that's the trend, now me personally, I'm not mad about video. Me personally, I love photographs and I don't necessarily click on that many videos. But if I look at those figures, then it moves me away from saying, what do I like? And it makes me think, okay, well, I might be different to what the trend is. If I want to grow my business, I need to be following the figures and looking at the trends. Then there are ways that we can learn from others. This is Facebook's, was it called? She Means Business. And for those that weren't in that session, he said that if we would like them to do this in one of our countries, we should mail him. He's given out his email address, and if you think they should come and set it up in your country, send him an email. This is an incredible resource as well, free for all of us for the next month, that Shadi provided. So once again, there's amazing learning that's available for free or for a small, for a small fee. And I thought it was very generous of Shadi as well to make this available to all of our team members. If you want to remember the link, or you want to remember the coupon code, Woman 2016, just look under news on the website. I've put a post about it with a direct link and with a coupon code on it. And then learning is also about identifying what's coming next and just keeping it in our minds. I think we can't even conceptualize some of what Jen was talking about in terms of what Google's going to be doing. It's hard to get our heads around the power of that. But even if you just vaguely have in the back of your head that Google's going to be doing some crazy stuff that's going to totally change the business, you just sort of keep your eye on what's happening there. It'll influence some of your strategic thinking. And then, of course, this issue of environment. Once again, Angelica mentioned it. She said, preserve and protect where you do your business. So that's, of course, nature, but it's also the people. Peter really highlighted, and I like this, what he had to say here. He said, tourism not only contributes to economic growth, but also reaches out to those that are so poor and underprivileged, they will probably never fly on an airplane, sleep in a hotel room, or eat at McDonald's. And then the last section, of course, and this is the most recent in our minds, issues of policy came up. So, of course, there's issues that can be challenged at a regional level, and I'm so excited about what has come out and the fact that Rachel's going to be presenting that. We are real power women in this room, and our voices are going to be heard at ministerial level, at government level, at regional level next week. I think I get goose flesh just thinking about that. Our voices are being heard. But how do we change some of that stuff? And it's about getting practical. It's about, instead of just saying, oh, I wish this was different. I mean, one of the big issues that, as we know, that came out this morning was this issue of online payments. It's about payments across countries, etc., etc. Indonesia, who here is from Indonesia? You must be so proud. Indonesia really came out as a role model in this regard, didn't it? And part of this is what we need to be communicating to our governments. When we look at this model, what was that payment mechanism that was mentioned where you can pay at ATMs and you can pay at convenience stores? Just incredible. Now that's, instead of us all kind of just wishing that things could change, it's also worth highlighting to our governments and our decision makers examples in the region that have overcome these problems. I mean, Gap mentioned, I mean, if Facebook has noticed what Indonesia's doing, that's incredible. Do you realize the power of that? Gap said, we at Facebook are learning from Indonesia. I think that's really, really powerful. And so we all have amazing examples of success in individual aspects in our countries. And if we can showcase what a different country is doing to overcome the obstacles that we face. Indonesia's payment system I did not know about, but I am so impressed by that. And it would be interesting to see how we could try and replicate that in Laos and in now the ASEAN countries. And then, of course, there are these issues of ease of doing business. We need to be petitioning against specific, that was one of the policy issues that came out. All the red tape, all of these issues that are linked to that. And to end on a final note, there's this issue of partnerships. That was one of the themes that came up for me. So overcoming some of the issues about access to finance, for example. Partnerships between government regulation in terms of their foreign exchange regulations and banks. Cooperation and partnerships between online payment solution providers, as we've seen in Indonesia, between industry and education providers, which is what Laneth so fabulously illustrates, and then between industry associations. That came out really clearly in our summaries this morning. People were saying, oh, we need an ASEAN Business Awards. Oh, it turns out there are. Oh, we need this association. Oh, it turns out that it is. So any of us that are involved in associations really need to be communicating with other associations. Of course, the issue then is how do we bring all of those main points together? And so when we come back to this left and right brain, the science versus the art brain, the creativity versus the logic brain, it's about how do we creatively put all of those kinds of things together. From my personal experience, I want to just give you one case study of something that I worked on recently that brings a lot of them together, and then hopefully there'll be a few minutes for you guys to maybe come up with some suggestions of how you can creatively bring these together. So for example, I was working with a small organization running what's called the Namno Night Safari. So it's a small, very low funding, run by a conservation organization. It's really kind of a little startup in a remote part of northeastern Laos. We didn't have much money for marketing. We don't have much money to pay people. We have all of these problems. Access to it is difficult. So it's a great case study of really setting up a business, setting up a disastrous business, but you're doing it because you're passionate about it and you really want to make a difference. So one of the things that we recently did was realizing that so much is on mobile, and internet, and there's a computer in the office, but of course we have our 2 guides that go out into the forest with the people each night, so they're not in the office that much. We then decided to pay their phone bills, and instead of giving an office telephone number, we hand out their telephone numbers. This means that people can phone them in the evenings, which is a bit scary, you would think. Except those 2 guys love it. They feel really, really important that their personal phone number is being handed out to customers who want to make bookings. It's been amazing in terms of human capital investment. Those guys feel invested in the business. They're personally involved. They're not as likely just going to walk off. The other thing that I did with them is that I created a business card for each of them that promotes them as a brand as well as our brand. So I put the logo of our night safari small on the back. And on the front, I put a big, beautiful picture of each of those guys. And then I gave the link to rate us on TripAdvisor. So at the end of each trip, when they've already bonded with people on the night safari and they're saying goodbye to their clients, they're very, very proud to hand over their business card, and it's personal. And then they ask the person to rate them on TripAdvisor and rate the product on TripAdvisor. And of course, people have got mobile, they can do the rating immediately. But that's been a powerful way to make those guys feel really invested and important in that little business. So they're still not getting very good salaries at all. We can't afford to pay them more, but they feel very, very powerful. And they feel very, very important. In terms of competition, what we did was we took those guys and then we took some of the community members. We took some of the Nebans, the village chiefs, and we took them to our competitors. And so we took some people from the north and we took them to a similar competitive product in the south, and they got to speak one-on-one. So the guides could chat to the guys down there and say, so how much do you earn? And then they all find out they all earn the same thing, even though it's a much more profitable competitor that we went to. We spoke to lodge owners, we spoke to ecotourism operators. But what was absolutely great was to go to the competition, to find out from them. And our guys came back and they had this attitude, we can do it better. We can do it better. And the members of the community that we took with us spoke to members of the community there. They spoke to lodge operators who were whining and moaning and complaining about how money from this ecotourism project has made the village wealthier. So now they've all rushed out and bought karaoke machines, and they all karaoke so loudly at night that people that have signed up for the ecotourism thing have to plug their ears at night because they're not in the forest listening to birdsong, they're listening to karaoke. Our community members went back. When the money starts trickling into their villages, those Nebans are going to make sure that no karaoke happens in their domain. So instead of us being worried about the competition, we took our guys to the competition, we got them to experience it, they were clients on the competitor's trip. We were all open about this, we'd arranged it with a competitor, and it was really, really transformative for the community and for those tour guides. What we also took, as my last note, on the policy level, was we took the district governors of the 2 provinces, and they could speak, they could act as kind of father figures to the people on the trip. They felt very important, and there's a direct line now from somebody as low as an overnight semi-illiterate tour leader to village Nebans who are totally illiterate. They now have a direct access to those district governors. And the district governors, I really got the sense they kind of felt like they were fathers. You know, initially they in some ways were sort of a bit patronizing, but over those 3 days a relationship developed. And so we could have people from a relatively low level speaking into policy issues at district level. So I'd love to turn it over to you in the last few minutes. Does anybody else have any examples or case studies of ways that you have managed to innovatively combine some of these trends? Or are there trends that I've missed?
Thank you. Thank you for the summary. It's been really great, and for 3 days here, and we seem like learning a lot from this kind of be involved with the business. But it's come up to the mobile phone that you've been mentioning, and a lot of people have been mentioning, and I believe all of us in the room has a mobile phone. But just raise some idea for this, or a little bit of comment if you meet our leaders for next week. I know everyone has a mobile phone, I do too, but how can we work with the mobile phone to be alive? You know, so we come to the hotels, we all have access to the Wi-Fi, and how we can make the mobile phone to be alive. But I just want to raise about the roaming system, because if you don't access to the Wi-Fi, how can you be connected? How can you communicate with other people, especially as the business like us, or as people that want to be connected with the business and check out with the business, and then find out that roaming should be interesting to raise with the meeting, and also want to get the Asian nation to get like the system of roaming system would access to us as the provider of the service, and as well as the traveler as well. Example, if they're coming to Cambodia, they would buy one of the SIM card and then they travel to Vietnam. That will be active for every country that they travel, because they need to check with the family home. And being as a business person, you know, you get to the Wi-Fi, of course, you can get in touch. But at home, for example, to Cambodia, my people work for me. They have limit of internet, and they have limit of the language, or what other thing that they could work and connected with me with internet or email and stuff. So I need to call and check with them. So I find out roaming is really important. Like this morning, I called them 7:30 in the morning and check how is everything, because I still leave work behind there and get people work for me as well. So I think if we can work it out with roaming system, could be a little bit lower cost and also available for Southeast Asia, that would be great, I think.
I think that is such an important point. And it also speaks into what I was mentioning about partnerships. So if we think about who the partners that are involved there, we need the private or independent telecommunications companies, we need state endorsement, we need the countries around us all to be involved in that. So that's a powerful partnership. It requires a lot of buy-in, but it would be transformative. If we had faster internet connections, more reliable internet connections, and we had roaming across the region. So that's not something we can do in our individual capacities. But I agree with you, that would be totally transformative and definitely worth pushing our leaders for.
Thanks. I guess perhaps from a provider's point of view, that provides software solution. Sorry, let me just sit down. We're really trying to educate more SMEs in our country to emphasize mobile first. And it's a really big issue that online presence is so limited for a lot of the businesses in my country. I don't know if it's the same in all of your countries as well. And it's surprising how a lot more sort of older business owners don't feel it's necessary to do so. And it's a lot of educating to teach them not only to have a website, and to be aware of what type of social media to use to fit your business type. So there are some, I've seen multi-million-dollar companies only have a Facebook page and have gmail.com as their email. And I think that's something that we all have to be aware of as well when you're developing your online presence, to be aware of, as you know, targeting your audience and finding the best fit for your business.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that Sam pointed out, was that it doesn't have to be complicated. You can make it very, very simple, but it's about having the right information and having the right fit. Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. I've learned a lot. Hope you have too.
Thank you so much, Dominique. What a wonderful presentation. Isn't it just so valuable to have it all summarised like that? I'm going to look forward to looking back over that many, many times. Dominique, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant job. Thank you from everybody. Yeah, good round of applause.